December 17th, 1903, 10:35 in the morning. The wind hits 27 miles per hour, cold and unforgiving off the Atlantic. A thin man lies flat on his stomach, hands gripping two wooden levers. Below him, sand, wind, and nothing else. In front of him, a machine of spruce and cotton that has never once left the ground with a person on it. His brother stands to the side, not breathing. The engine roars. The propellers spin. Will 12 seconds of flight change human history forever? But to understand why this moment matters, we need to go back further than airplanes, further than engines, further than the wheel. For 300,000 years, every single human being who ever lived stayed on the ground. Imagine a world with no flight at all. Not a plane, not a rumor of one, not even a myth anyone believed. Birds owned the sky. Humans just watched them. Every war, every trade route, every letter, every goodbye, all of it moved at the speed of a horse or a ship. This is the story of the two men who broke that rule. Not scientists, not the richest men in America. Two brothers who ran a bicycle shop in Ohio and refused to believe the sky was off limits. Dayton, Ohio, 1899. Wilbur Wright is 32 years old. Quiet, deliberate, the kind of man who reads a problem 3 times before touching it. His younger brother Orville is 28, more restless, more mechanical, always tinkering. Together, they run a small print shop turned bicycle repair business, fixing chains and selling tires to farmers and school teachers. Neither man has a college degree. Neither man has ever built an engine. And yet, every night after closing the shop, Wilbur sits at a desk and writes letters to the Smithsonian Institution, asking for every scrap of research ever published on human flight. Here's the thing people forget. By 1899, flight wasn't a fringe idea. It was a graveyard. Otto Lilienthal, the German glider pioneer Wilbur idolized, had died in a crash just 3 years earlier, his neck broken. His last words reportedly, "Small sacrifices must be made." Samuel Langley, the most respected scientist in America, was burning through $50,000 of government money, a fortune at the time, building a flying machine that couldn't stay airborne for more than a few seconds before crashing into the Potomac River. This is basically the ancient version of the space race, except everyone competing was either dying or going broke. Every night, for hundreds of thousands of years, humanity had watched birds glide overhead and simply accepted it wasn't for them. Every night, for hundreds of thousands of years, humanity sat under the sky with no way to touch it. The Wright brothers didn't have money. They didn't have credentials. What they had was a bicycle shop's worth of tools, a stubborn habit of testing every claim themselves, and a small town on the coast of North Carolina where the wind never stopped blowing, a place called Kitty Hawk. By 1900, they had a glider. By 1902, they had a glider that actually worked. Over 1,000 controlled flights, none longer than 26 seconds. But a glider isn't an aircraft. A glider rides the wind. What they needed now was power. An engine light enough to fly, strong enough to lift a man, and small enough that no one had ever built one like it before. Winter 1903. The Wright bicycle shop in Dayton smells like machine oil and sawdust. Charlie Taylor, their mechanic, has 6 weeks to build an engine from scratch because no manufacturer in America will sell them one light enough for flight. He works 12-hour days at a hand-crank lathe. No blueprints exist for what he's making. He's inventing the part and the process at the same time. The engine that comes out weighs 152 pounds and produces just 12 horsepower, barely enough to power a modern lawnmower. It has to lift a wooden aircraft, a pilot, and itself off the ground using nothing but 2 spinning propellers carved by hand by Orville, using math borrowed from ship propeller design because no one had ever calculated an air propeller before. By September 1903, the brothers shipped their machine, nicknamed the Flyer, to Kitty Hawk in 5 wooden crates. They set up camp in a wind-battered shed on the Outer Banks, miles from the nearest town, sleeping on cots, cooking over an open flame, fighting mosquitoes so thick Orville later wrote they had to breathe through cloth to avoid inhaling them. Then the waiting begins. Storms delay them for weeks. The propeller shafts crack and have to be shipped back to Dayton for repair, a round trip that cost them nearly a month. December arrives, and with it, brutal cold. The men who work at the nearby life-saving station think the brothers are either geniuses or lunatics, probably both. On December 14th, they're ready. They flip a coin to decide who flies first. Wilbur wins. He climbs aboard, the engine roars, and the Flyer lurches upward, then stalls and crashes into the sand after 3 seconds. No injuries, but damage to the skids, and worse, 3 more days lost to repairs. Here's the human weakness nobody puts in the textbooks. Wilbur was furious with himself. He'd overcorrected, pulled up too hard, too fast. A man who had spent 4 years perfecting patience lost it in 3 seconds of panic. He barely spoke that night. By December 17th, the wind is dangerously strong, nearly 27 miles per hour, gusting harder. Any other day, they'd have called it off, but they've been at Kitty Hawk for months. Money's running low. Winter is closing in. This might be the last chance before they have to pack up and go home empty-handed. 5 men from the life-saving station gather to help move the launch rail. Orville sets up a camera on a tripod aimed at the end of the track and asks one of the men to squeeze the shutter the instant the machine leaves the ground. His hands are shaking, not from the cold, from something else. It's Orville's turn to fly. 10:35 a.m. Orville lies flat on the lower wing. His hips rest in a wooden cradle built to steer the aircraft side to side. Wilbur grips the wingtip, running alongside, steadying the machine against the wind. The engine fires. The propellers become a blur. Orville releases the restraining wire. The Flyer creeps forward along the launch rail, 12 feet. Wilbur lets go. The wheels lift off the wooden track. The machine rises, barely 10 feet off the ground, bucking hard in the gusting wind, nose pitching up, then down, then leveling out. It holds. It flies. For 12 seconds, a human being is airborne, under power, under control, for the very first time in recorded history. 120 feet. That's the total distance, shorter than the wingspan of the passenger jets that would one day cross oceans. The Flyer touches down in the sand. Orville is alive. The engine is intact. 5 witnesses saw it happen, and 1 photograph, snapped by a stranger at the exact right instant, freezes the moment forever. The machine airborne, Wilbur standing beside it, mouth open. In that moment, everything changed, not just for 2 brothers from Ohio, for every human being who would ever live after. They flew 3 more times that day. The 4th flight, piloted by Wilbur, covered 852 feet and stayed airborne for 59 seconds, nearly a full minute of controlled, powered flight. Then, the wind flipped the Flyer over on the ground, damaging it beyond repair for that trip. It never flew again. But it didn't need to. The proof already existed, in 5 witnesses, 1 photograph, and 2 brothers who now knew with total certainty that the sky was no longer off limits. The news barely made a ripple at first. Newspapers doubted it. Some editors flatly refused to believe 2 bicycle mechanics had beaten the U.S. government's own $50,000 flying machine program. It would take years and increasingly public demonstrations before the world accepted what had happened on that beach. But the chain reaction had already started. Within a decade, aircraft were reconnaissance tools in the Balkan Wars. Within 11 years, they were fighting machines over the trenches of the First World War. Within 40 years, they were carrying atomic weapons. Within 66 years, 1 human lifetime after Kitty Hawk, a spacecraft built on the same basic principles of lift and control landed 2 men on the moon. The empire of the sky that Orville and Wilbur opened that morning, you're still living inside its legacy right now. Every flight you've ever taken, every package delivered by air, every satellite photo of your own house, All of it traces back to 120 feet of frozen sand in North Carolina. Consider this, the entire distance of that first flight would fit inside the length of a single Boeing 747. What took 12 seconds in 1903 now takes 12 hours to cross an ocean, and nobody on board even looks out the window. Two brothers with no degree, no funding, and no permission from anyone changed what it means to be human. In 12 seconds, on a cold beach, nobody was watching. Every time you glance out an airplane window at clouds passing below you, you're looking at something that, for 300,000 years, no human being was ever allowed to see. The sky was never really closed. Someone just had to be stubborn enough to open the door.